ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदाङ्कितं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवां श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण श्रीललिता विशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुण सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषाय शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि। जयो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा and welcome you all to the online Bhagavad Gita classes of level 2 from ISKCON Mangalore. So until last weekend we covered the chapter 9. Yeah. So this week or today we'll start chapter 10. Yeah. So before we start chapter 10, so there are some highlights of chapter 9, right? So first, in couple of first verses, 9.1 to 9.3, so we heard about Krishna, right? The qualifications which are required, right? And the disqualifications, yeah, of hearing about Krishna, yeah. And then the Aishwarya Jnana, yeah. So the relationship with the material world, we got to know. And then we saw the worshippers, non-worshippers, yeah. And Krishna as the object of worship and the glories, yeah. And we saw also the Raja Vidya, right? So Raja Vidya and then Guhyam, yeah. So we went through the secret knowledge also, right? The confidential, the more confidential, and the most confidential. Yeah? The 10th chapter was all about the most confidential, which is nothing but Ananya Bhakti. Okay. And anyone remembers the last sloka which we discussed? So ninth chapter ends with one of the sloka. So anyone remembers the first line? So Krishna actually gives us the solution also. So how we can achieve him? Yeah. So that was man mana mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuro. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Someone was saying something. Sorry.
No, Prabhu, you have said already, so I just remembered.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the sloka wherein so Krishna gives us the path also. So how do we achieve him? So he says that if you remember me all the time, right, and you'll achieve me. And then in there is no doubt. So to reach his abode, right, he has given the solution multiple times. Yeah. And in this, he gives in. Yeah. And so we'll have to follow through that. Yeah. So that is nothing but the Bhakti Yoga. Yeah. So, and 10th chapter, right? So he'll discuss more on this. Yeah. So 10th chapter, it'll be continuation. So until then, so he discussed about say how to fix the mind and all, right? So what happens to worshippers, non-worshippers? He went into different categories. Now the Lord will show his opulences. So because we'll be dealing in the material world day in and out, day out, right? So we'll be seeing so many things. Say, how do we actually fix our mind, yeah, on the Lord and remember Him, yeah? So because He is the creator of both spiritual and material world, right? So how do we see Lord in everything, yeah? So that is the next continuation. 9 was we should become a pure devotee, and then after becoming, so now He'll increase our devotion, yeah. So by actually hearing about his opulences, yeah. So it's like most of us know that say in from our childhood, right? So we know that God is great, right? So all the times we have been told that God is great, yeah? So now in this chapter, Krishna will actually showcase how the greatness of the God, yeah. So his opulences he'll discuss, yeah. And yeah, so we'll just go to the course content before I speak more about it, and then we'll see. So even we'll have the Chatur Shloki also this we covered. Yeah. So Krishna's position as the origin of everything. So first he'll establish saying that he is the origin, and this is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So in Bhagavatam also we have Chatur Shloki Bhagavatam. Yeah. So the whole Bhagavad Gita can be compressed into this four, or the essence is not in these 4 verses, which is known as Chatur Shloka. Yeah. So we'll cover this. And then Arjuna's acceptance, okay, and his request. So this is the next section. Yeah, we'll see. Today we'll cover A and B, and then tomorrow we'll cover C. Yeah. C, it will be majority like Arjuna's acceptance, and then say the opulences of Lord Krishna. Okay. So as we do go on, right? So this is what in the ninth chapter, right? So the last one ended with Manvana, yeah. And so Krishna actually asks us to fix the mind on him, right? So this we discussed, yeah, more or less, and hence describes his opulences on which a devotee can fix his mind. Yeah? And then how do we remember? So that's there here. And conclusion of chapter 9 is one should be a pure devotee of the Lord. And the other aspect which we saw in chapter 9 is Preeti. Yeah, Preeti and Bhaktya. So these are the 2 words you'll often see. Uh, so if there is no bhava and there is no love, then that relationship doesn't flourish. Yeah. So though we may be doing say all the rituals and then say for the ritualistic thing, or say for the purpose of doing, if we do it right, so without any vow or any love, right? So Krishna gives benediction, but that is on a lighter note, right? So, so this again goes to ye yathamam prapadyante, right? So the way we surrender, the Lord reciprocates, right? So in if we do it with love, right? So like if we chant, then chant with love. Yeah. If you do any service, do service with love, because you are already doing something. So do it with love. That actually gives more results. And then Krishna looks for that. Yeah. He doesn't look for the mundane or the robotic thing to happen. Yeah. And then he says in, right, even in our ninth chapter, he says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, right? So in there also he stresses bhakti twice. Yeah. So this is what we discussed. So I'll not discuss this. We'll go move on here. So yeah, so the first 3 chapters, right? Anyone knowing Krishna as unborn, yeah. Supreme Lord and the source of all sages and demigods is undiluted and free from sin. Okay. So this is the first three slokas. Yeah. So we'll just check in, and then the others one would be all qualities and attitudes, freedom from all illusion, self-control, and infamy are created by Krishna. So even the qualities, right? We'll discuss. So Shama, Dhamma, Tapa. So there are a lot of qualities, a list of qualities, Buddhi, all these things, right? As a Krishna says that all those things are created by him. Yeah. So those who knows the glories engage in Krishna's service. Okay. So this is the gist. Okay. So in here, right, in the first sloka, right, the Supreme Lord said, "My dear friend, mighty armed Arjuna, listen again to my supreme word, yeah, which I shall impart to you for your benefit and which will give you a great joy." Yeah. So in after this, right, so Krishna actually tells, okay, all his opulences. Yeah. And here there is a context of in the purport, right, about Parashara Muni, yeah? So who actually again expands the term Bhagwan, yeah. And so we already covered this in our previous chapters, where one who is full of six opulences, yeah. And so here he says again to listen, yeah. So again the benefit of hearing has been stressed here, yeah. So and the thing should be in such a way that the speaker should be on an platform, so where he would like to actually inform, or say he want to tell, he wants to actually do the Krishna Katha, or say he wants to glorify, yeah, the Lord. And at the same time, right, the receiver also should be in the same way. So like in the Bhagavatam, right, Suta Goswami was on a higher platform, right? So he was an elevated soul who was actually glorifying or delivering the concepts about Krishna, right? And then the other side, right, the sages who were there, right, they were double interested. So it's like that combination becomes very fruitful, yeah? And then that's the effective way. So one should have the eagerness to hear, and then one should be having the eagerness to tell. Yeah. So in this way we can move on. Even this has been stressed in Chaturshloki also. So we'll see through in, yeah. And in the next verse, yeah. So this is what the opulence of the absolute. Yeah, okay, eagerness to hear. So chapter 7 is the Lord explained his different energies and how they are acting. Yeah. So 9, he establishes the different energies. Okay. 10, he gives the more confidential knowledge. So it's been said that he's giving the more confidential knowledge. Yeah? And so the hearing bit is stressed here. Yeah? So eagerness to hear is the qualification. Okay. And so what is the benefit? Fixed in devotional service. The more one hears, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. Yeah. And then this should be done in association of devotees. Yeah. So that's the major portion of it. And then the Lord says that he is unknown. Yeah? So nobody knows him. Yeah? So neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages who know my origin for in every aspect. And I am the source of both demigods and sages. Because he is the creator, right? He is the creator and maintainer. So he is the source of everything. So even Lord Brahma, so who is the grandfather, right? So who is the grandfather, who is the first living entity, right? He himself is being created by the Lord. So nobody knows. Even Lord Brahma had to do tapasya for 10,000 years. Yeah. So before he could get the darshan of the Lord and then get the instructions from the Lord. Yeah. So nobody knows him. Yeah. And he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, and the supreme Lord of all worlds, he undiluted among men is freed from all sins. And then whosoever knows this, right? So he is free from all sins. Yeah. So here, so knowing about the Lord, right? So even we have the classic examples, right? So wherein so we have that Brahma Moha Vimohan Leela, right? So wherein say, Brahma had a suspicion. So the Gokul boy, right? So Lord Krishna. So he was thinking that he's a normal boy, and so he wanted to test so whether this is Krishna or not. Yeah, and then he actually kidnaps all the cows and calves, yeah, and the gopas, all his friends, and so Brahma actually kidnapped, and then he just kept them for quite some time. Yeah, so it was some minutes or
For
so.
year, Prabhuji,
Hmm. Sorry.
for year, for year, actually Brahma had kept, it was like mentioned, for more than a year.
No, no. So for us, it becomes an year. Okay.
Oh, yes, Prabhuji, yes.
Yeah. So it's for him, it was like a nap time or something. Okay. So he just took in and then he kept in. But in our material sense, right, it is an year, right? A few moments of Brahma also becomes an year. So by the time, so Brahma actually woke up and then he saw, so everything was normal. So in Vrindavan, everything was normal. So he went to the cave, and then when he saw, there also he found everyone. Okay. So the cows, calves, and the gopas, right? So whosoever he kidnapped, all were there. And in the Govardhan also, everyone was there. So the Lord manifested, right, into all those gopas and cows and calves. eh. So that we can't understand. Yeah. So that is the opulence of the Lord. So and then Brahma actually prays to Krishna. Yeah. So he accepts that so Krishna is the so it was Krishna only who was present in Govardhan, and then all this Leela happened. Yeah. So and then he prays, and then he asks for um, all apologies, and all those things comes in. So he has his own prayers there. So that even Brahma gets bewildered with what Lord Krishna does in. Yeah. So for us, right, uh, the living entities, it is very difficult. So the only way is so we'll have to accept what is being told in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, right? So we'll have to accept from the authorities, yeah? And Vyasadeva, right? So Vyasadeva has given us Bhagavatam, yeah? So who is the incarnation of the Lord Himself, and in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord Himself is speaking. So we'll have to listen to them, yeah? And so all our mundane logics and material logics are confined because we have seen that world in that way, right? So like a frog in a well, right? So we know that thing, but it's an ocean to be known, so which we are unaware of, yeah? And similarly for Govardhan also, right? So Indra actually tried to actually influence and create an havoc, but nothing worked out. And then he himself had to bend, and then he even said that he wanted to resign from his post. Yeah. So all these things happen. So it's like the king of the devatas and the first creator himself are bewildered with what the Lord's opulences are, and then what the inconceivable potency the Lord does. So it is very difficult for us to imagine. Yeah. So yeah. So result of understanding of Krishna properly is nothing but freedom from all sinful reactions. Yeah. Even so, we have so many verses, right? Janma karma cha me divyam, all those things. Yeah. And the most successful spiritually realized persons are very rare. Yeah. This is Manushya Sarveshu, I think. So out of many men, right? So there is one man who knows, who actually realizes this, right? So I think that is 7.3. And so Lord is unborn, yeah, and he's different. So we should not compare at our level. And Veti Loka Maheshwara. This phrase means the Supreme Lord of all the worlds, right? So he is what? He is the Lord of both material world and spiritual world, yeah. And how one should not perceive Krishna trying to understand him as human being. So this is there in 9.1 verse. Devotional service is the only way to know Krishna. One must be free from all sinful activities, result of knowing, immediate freedom from all sinful actions. The only solution is we should actually know him through devotional service. Yeah. So we'll have to surrender him. And the full surrender only happen one out of many, many births, right? In many, many births, one out of many millions, right? One may endeavor, yeah, and then one would be succeeded. But for others, right, at least the human life is guaranteed, and then wherever we have stopped, right, so we'll get started from there. Yeah. So, but we should try that. We put our sincere efforts, yeah, and then try to go to Golak Vrindavan in this life itself. Yeah. And this Vetiloka Maheshwaram, right? So he was existing before the creation. Yeah. So that means that he is the created, right? And then when say even the demigods were created, but the Lord is not created. Yeah. So we know that from the Karnodayaksha Vishnu, right? Everything emanates, right? Okay. And we should not should actually perceive Krishna, say, try to understand him as a human being, right? So that should not be done. Yeah. So best thing is to learn from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Yeah. So this is the best way to learn in. Yeah. So Shastras do not lie. Yeah. So every time, only thing is we'll have to search, and in Shastras we have every answer. Yeah. So maybe we have not read through properly. Okay. But yes, Shastra has all the information. And even if you see, right, Prabhupada actually quotes, if you have heard Prabhupada's lectures, right, say every time, right, he speaks in, right, anything he defends, right, everything would be based on Shastras. So any example he gives in, right, he'll quote one Shastric evidence. So there is nothing which is not there in Shastra. Yeah. Yeah, and now slowly, so Krishna gives actually the list. Okay, so he gives the list of the qualities. Okay, so which are possessed by living beings, right? All good and bad, and so nothing can manifest without him. Yeah, so there is a full list actually. So in the purport, right, Prabhupada has given liners also. So he has given about intelligent knowledge and all those things. We'll cover few of them, but if you want all of them to be covered, right? So you can just go through this verse. So wherein he has given for everything. Yeah, buddhir jnanam asammoha, yeah, shama satyam dama, yeah, sukham dukkham bhavo. everything. So all these things, right? So this chart is there. So here it is there. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, yeah, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, yeah, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. All these various qualities of living beings are created by me alone. Okay. So the Lord says all these things are created by Him. We'll just read through couple of them. Yeah. So because it's not possible for us to cover all those things, you can read it at your leisure. Yeah. So it's not that difficult. So Prabhupada has actually written very simple lines for everything. Yeah. So everything he has discussed. So buddhi is nothing but intelligence. Yeah. The power to analyze things in their proper perspective. Yeah. So this we read, right? Sukha Dukha. So Man, Apman, and these are all part of Krishna consciousness or devotee, right? So it's not that the devotees doesn't have all these things. So everyone has in, but he sees both equally, right? So we should move on. And Sama is nothing but restrain the mind from unnecessary thoughts like money, power thoughts. Yeah. So this is control of mind. Okay. And knowledge, knowing the distinction between matter and spirit. Yeah. This is the most important thing. Yeah. So academicians only talks about matter. Yeah. And freedom from doubt and delusion can be achieved when one acts without hesitation based on understanding transcendental philosophy. Yeah? So tolerance and forgiveness excuses the minor offenses of others. Yeah? So this is forgiveness. It shouldn't be that if somebody does a small mistake, say he becomes our enemy forever. Yeah, yeah. It's like sometimes the grandfather or grandmother in the family, right? So they have a clash or with some of their relative, right? And then they'll say that if you go to that city, you can go to the city and visit other places, but don't go to this relative's house. Yeah, so we shouldn't do that. So control of senses, dhamma, is that thing, but senses should not be used for unnecessary personal enjoyment. Yeah? So this we know. So yukta ahara viharasya. So everything should be used, but everything should be controlled. Yeah. So this also we learned in, right. Even the food which we take, even the sleep which we use, all our senses should be utilized favorably for Krishna and in a controlled fashion, not in an uncontrolled way, not to enjoy. Yeah. And this is satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, equanimity, non-violence, fearlessness, but and then this 50% income to Krishna consciousness. This is Dhanam. So this was started by Rupa Goswami. Yeah? So Rupa Goswami has given this way, right? So ideally, so what one should do is, the Rupa Goswami says that if you have 100%, right? So give 50% of the income to Krishna consciousness, and then 25% to your relatives and friends, and 25% keep it for your personal emergencies. Yeah. So that is how he divided the money. Okay. You'll know this in level 3. Yeah. So when you'll read NOI and NOD. So and then what happened to that 25%? How was it being utilized? Also, yeah? Whichever he had. So he had in fact, a boat full of gold coins. Yeah. So he was a millionaire, multi-millionaire at that time. So you'll know those stories. Yeah. And in the next, right, he continues, the Lord continues his opulences. He says that the seven rishis, right, the first seven rishis, and before them the four other great sages are nothing but the four Kumaras. Yeah, all these are Manasaputras. Okay, so are born out of my mind, and all creature in this planet descend from them. And the Manus, the progenitors, and all, right? Manus are nothing but the progenitors of mankind. So all these things were created by the Lord, and the Lord is the source of everything. So these all details you'll get to know in Bhagavatam. Yeah. So Bhagavatam, you'll have all these details. How many Manus, yeah, and then the children of Manus, and then how this all uh, get expanded. Yeah. So all these details you can get from Bhagavatam when we start reading Bhagavatam. But for now, have this information that everything has come from the Lord. Yeah. So he is the Prapitama, right? So we call Brahma is our Pitama, right? And so rest all, right? All these Manus, right? All these Manus and everything they have come from the Lord itself. Okay. So, and in the next sloka, right? The Lord actually says, so again, he says that no one can actually understand him through the conventional means. Yeah. So one has to factually be convinced by the opulences. Yeah. So he starts his opulences. So now he'll actually kickstart, and then he'll get into the Chatur Shloki. So now he'll say that why the opulences are required, right? So unless their opulences are there, right? So no one can accept. So the acceptance of the Krishna, it will be more. Yeah. So we'll get to know these things. Yeah. So the eagerness would be more. So something, I take an example of a cricketer or an any other. So we'll take the example of a cricketer or a film star, right? So people get attached and eager, right? So every time they'll be looking for a news, right? So they'll be waiting what news has come from for this cricketer and all those things, right? So similarly, if we know the opulences of the Lord, right? So we'll be more eager to do our devotional service. Yeah. He who knows in truth the glory and power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. So the Lord says that the one who knows the opulences, right? So his interest on devotional service will be more. Okay. And yeah, and I think it's covered in this slide also. The absolute appreciating Krishna's positions, right? So leads to surrender. So the highest summit of spiritual perfection is knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, generally people know God is great, but they do not know the detail how God is great. Yeah. So everyone uses this terminology, but here Krishna proves it. Yeah. And then why do we need this opulences? Yeah. So, so what is the need to know these opulences? Well, only if one is firmly convinced, right, about the opulences, then one can accept Krishna with great faith and without doubt. So if there are any doubts, right, so everything will get cleared. One becomes fixed up and be sincere in loving devotional service. Yeah. One comes to the platform of factual knowledge. There is no alternative but surrender. So you'll not know all those facts, right? So where will you get? The source is Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. And conclusion is nothing. Do not neglect to understand fully how Krishna is great and is the forefather of all the forefathers. So he is sitting in Golok Vrindavan. Yeah? And then everything spiritual, Vaikuntha, whatever spiritual planets, whatever, everything is under his control. Yeah. So now we'll go to the essence of Bhagavad Gita is nothing but the Chatur Shloki. Yeah? So it is good to remember these 4 shlokas. Yeah. So in the first 2 shlokas, right, say the Lord actually tells say about Bhakti Yoga, right? And in the next 2, he actually says how he actually reciprocations. Yeah. The last 2 verses are about his reciprocation. Yeah. And then in here, we'll just read this shloka. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So here, right, he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Yeah, so he is the source of everything. Yeah. And iti matva bhajante mam. So those who know this, right, and then do devotional service, Buddha bhava samanvitaha. Yeah. So I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who knows this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with their within all their hearts. Yeah. So this is the first one. Yeah. And then there are a lot of references which actually Prabhupada quotes in here, right? So like there are different Upanishads and all, right? So where this particular statement is confirmed, yeah. So even the learned scholars, right? So after learning the Vedas, they'll come to know that so the Krishna is the ultimate thing, and then we should do Bhakti Yoga, right? And so in this, right, so you'll just read through in the next slide, right? So wherein Prabhupada actually gives a lot of details, yeah. So even in the purport also, right? He says I think there are some Gopal Upanishads, Narayana Upanishad, Maha Upanishad. He actually touch bases a lot of things. Wherein in I think in Gopal Upanishad, Krishna is the beginning, and then he gave the knowledge, yeah, to Brahma. So this is confirmed from there. So we also know him, right? Because he was the first living entity who was created, and then the supreme person in the other words, right, in the Narayana Upanishad also it is mentioned that the supreme person Narayana desired to create the living entities. Yeah, thus all the creations, right, like Brahma and Vasus, Indra, Rudras were there. Yeah, so even in Vara Purana, Narayana is the supreme personality of Godhead from whom others were born. So these are all different, um, say, Upanishads wherein say the Lord touch bases, and then Narayana is an expansion of Krishna. Yeah, so Adityas, everything was born, and then we'll see these in great detail. Yeah, so he says that among Adityas I am the sun. Yeah, so the Lord actually will tell among the Devatas I am Lord Indra. So all those things we'll get to know in the coming verses. Yeah. But in this, you should know that aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. So he is the creator of everything, spiritual and living entity. Yeah. So everything comes out of him, right? So all the unlimited spiritual worlds or the universes, they come, they emanate from him. And then we have seen that he is the seed giver father. Yeah. So all these things we covered. So he's again confirming that everything emanates from him. Yeah. So again, the same stuff in a greater detail. Yeah. So here the opulence, Krishna is the original source of spiritual and material world. Yeah? So this we covered. And then how can we understand this truth about Krishna as the original source? Through bona fide authorities. Yeah. So a learned scholar who has studied the Vedas perfectly and has information from authorities like Lord Chaitanya, and one who knows how to apply the teachings can understand this truth. Yeah. So this is how we can understand. Yeah. We are fortunate that all these things are available for us. Only thing is we'll have to utilize them. Yeah. And then these all were the examples wherein the references, right? So which actually tells us that Krishna is the source of everything. Yeah? And recommendations for Krishna consciousness person is to avoid the unauthorized commentaries. Yeah. So because so those who do not understand about the Lord's opulences and then want to mint money, right? Say they'll not do all these things. So they'll tell some Bhagavad Katha and then something and then they'll move on. Yeah. And then if you look in, right, so in India, right, there are a lot of shops wherein they do Bhagavad Saptas. Yeah. So wherein they'll teach Bhagavatam in 7 days. Yeah. Okay. So it's not possible for us to learn Bhagavatam in 7 days. Yeah. So it was, we are not that exalted devotee like Parikshit Maharaj. Yeah. So continuously heard Bhagavatam for 7 days, day and night without food and water. Yeah. Similarly, on the other side, it was Suta Goswami who was actually delivering it, who's an another liberated soul. Yeah. So their thing was different, and then we can't do that. And most of the time, right, the speakers, it's most of the time it is for earning money only, right? Because that's their livelihood, right? In Kali Yuga, they have used it for livelihood. Yeah. So all these Bhagavad Saptas and all, right? So they do it for money. Yeah. And result of knowing this is worshipping Krishna with all their hearts, engaged in devotional service and surrender. So Bhagavatam is not to be read for 7 days. It has to be read Nityam. Yeah. Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki. Yeah. So we'll have to do it. Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam. So in the shloka itself is there. Okay. So that's something. And then, so what happens, right? Here the Lord says that He is the source of everything, right? And then if one knows in, right, that the Lord is so the source, right? Then his mind is fixed, right? Then what happens is Matachita Matagata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Kathayantascha Mama Nityam Tushyanti cha Ramaninti cha. So the thoughts of my pure devotee dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening one another and conversing about me. So what happens is once you go into that stage, right, they relish the talks about the Lord. Yeah. So whatever talks they have, right? So once their mind is fixed, yeah, and then they know that the Lord is everything, right? And then they have surrendered, right, for them. So even in their private talks, right, say they would like to have the glorification of the Lord, yeah, and say they would actually, but that's at the next level, yeah. Even there, right? So there are two levels, right? So initially, right, at the preliminary stage or the stage one, right? So we'll relish, the devotees would relish the pleasure, right, by doing the service. And then in the mature, right, in the mature stage, they are fully thinking of the Lord, right, so all the time. And so at that situation, right, so even whatever they talk in, right, so or the saying, so everything they'll see in the Lord, yeah. And so even if you're sitting alone, right? If an exalted devotee comes in, right? So he'll whenever he speaks with you, right? He'll speak about the greatness of Krishna, or the glorification, or the pastimes of Krishna, and then he'll be relishing them. So he'll be in ecstasy. Okay. So what happens is all these things comes by hearing, right? So first you will be hearing. Yeah. So once you are hearing, right? So matchita matagada. So when you will be discussing about these things, right? And bodhayantas parasparam. So the talks which you do among the devotees, right? You'll be talking about the Lord, right? So once you hear, right, and then you hear repetitively the pastimes, the glories of the Lord, and then your mind is fixed on it, right? You start speaking, right? So this is nothing but Shravanam, Kirtanam, right? And then Vishnu Smaranam. So all these things are covered here, right? So one is we are listening, we are talking, and then to talk, we'll have to remember, right? So all these things are happening here, and then doing so, they are relishing, right? So they enjoy the bliss. Okay, so they'll not have all these gramya katha, yeah, unwanted discussions. They'll not like, and they're in full bliss. Yeah. So this 8 we saw, right? Sorry, no, it should be the next slide, right? Yeah. So for them, right? You see, so all the time they'll be thinking of Krishna. So thoughts of my pure devotee dwell in me, fully devoted in my life. They derive great satisfaction and bliss always during the conversation. Yeah. This was the preliminary stage which just spoke on. Yeah. This is nothing but the symptoms of a pure devotee. Yeah. How Krishna becomes here, you see, right? So how Krishna becomes the soul. Whatever discussions they do, it is always about Lord Krishna. So, and here, um, where do we get? So, what do the devotees discuss? Yeah. So, what do these devotees discuss is nothing but Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. And so, which is free from dharma, artha, and kama. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is doesn't have dharma, artha, kama. Okay. So, it is only pure transcendental love. The stories are of transcendental love of the devotee is being discussed here. Yeah. So, and even here an analogy of Bhakti Lata Beach is given. Yeah. So this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah. So wherein so the Lord says that uh, Guru Krishna Prasad. ब्रह्मांड भ्रमिते कोनो भाग्यवान जीव गुरु कृष्ण प्रसादे पाए bhakti lata pij. Yeah. So this particular example is nothing but out of many millions, right? Only one is fortunate who can get the grace of Krishna by the mercy of the spiritual master, yeah, or Krishna. So this is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is mostly a famous shloka, yeah, so which is being used, which this discussion, many of them quote this example. Yeah. So even Prabhupada quotes it most of the time. Yeah. So now the next two verses are the ones wherein the reciprocation happens. Yeah. So if we surrender to the Lord, so what happens next? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. Right. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Right. So here the Lord says that the reciprocation bit, right? So those who are actually surrendered, and then so those who are actually have taken bhakti yoga, right? So for them, right, the path, right? So the buddhi yoga, right, or the buddhi is given by the Lord. Yeah. So the Lord actually guides them. Yeah. So if one is putting all his efforts, right, and then if there is something which is lagging, right, the Lord actually covers him. Yeah. So and that's he gives the buddhi. Yeah. And then he'll actually Tadami buddhi yogam tesham sadata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Whosoever does devotional service in priti purvakam. Yeah. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. So he gives, the Lord gives him the buddhi, right, to actually excel and then come, right. So to go back to him, yeah. Yenamam upayantite. So he shows the path, yeah. So that could be in various ways, right? So through Guru, Shastra. So it depends, right? So in any of the ways he can show. Okay, when a person knows the goal of life is addicted to the fruits of activities, he is acting in karma yoga. So who knows that say the Lord is the goal of life, but is addicted to the fruits of activities. Okay. So here it should be Krishna as the goal of life, but is addicted to the fruits of activities. He is acting in karma yoga. Yeah. Similarly, one who knows the goal is Krishna but takes pleasure in mental speculations, right? So he is acting in Jnana Yoga. Yeah? And but the goal for one should be that he is completely surrendered to Lord Krishna and does devotional service. So that is nothing but Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, which is the complete yoga, right? And so that is the perfect knowledge. Yeah. So the Lord gives intelligence, as he said, right? So, but the only qualification is we should be sincere, right? We should be sincere and devoted, right, to the devotional service. It should not be that we have tinge of doubt. So if you have doubt, then you're gone, right? So that's not devotion, right? Surrender means complete, 100% surrender. So the example which you took in, right? So like the child. So when the baby is in months, right, he is fully surrendered to his mother, right? He doesn't do anything on his own. Yeah. So if we have that kind of surrender, then the Lord actually takes care of us. Yeah. And expectation also we shouldn't have, right? So whatever we do service, right, we should do right with love and leave it to the Lord. So that's the thing. Yeah. And the next verse is also about the Lord's mercy only. Yeah. So we'll just see through what is there in this slide. Okay, this is same. When one completes the goal and seeks, yeah, this is more or less which we discussed. Different steps of yoga. Yeah. This is 10.11. Yeah. So Tesham eva anukampartham aham ajnanajam tama nashyasmi atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhashvate. So out of compassion for them, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy the shining lamp destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So the Lord gives special mercy. Yeah. So this Eva Anukampartham is nothing but special mercy. Tama is nothing but darkness. He gives, yeah. So the darkness is removed by the lighting. So the Lord in the heart lights up, yeah, and then he gives us the lighting and then removes, right, say the darkness which we have in, right? Okay. So even the dust, the other thing is the dust which is actually accumulated, right, in the purport, the Prabhupada writes in. So the conditioned soul is heart is actually covered with dust. Yeah. So even that will be cleansed. Yeah. And even the example of sun is being given, right? So wherever there is sun, right? So there is no darkness, right? And Krishna is like the sun who will destroy all the darkness which we have in this material life, right? So he gives us the special mercy. Yeah? And again, the qualification is that we should carry out the devotional service and the Lord within the heart, right? So he'll reveal. Yeah. Yeah, special mercy. Lord destroys all the impediments, and dispels any ignorance in the heart with the shining lamp of knowledge. So here, as a Paramatma, right? So he'll actually remove all the dust or the darkness which you have. Okay. The only thing is we should surrender to the Lord. So that's the Lord's special mercy. Yeah. So Lord reciprocates with his pure devotee by destroying all the impediments and dispels any ignorance. Yeah. What so speculation or mere mental efforts fails to help. There is no possibility to understand the supreme truth by speculating. So there is no way. Yeah. And supreme truth is so great that it is not possible to understand him simply by mental efforts. So whatever efforts we put in, right? So those are useless. So only we should have devotional service. Yeah. So our agenda should be that we are the servants of the Lord, and then the Lord has created everything and then given us a chance. We should do proper devotional service, and then He'll take care. Yeah. So He says, right, most of the time, and say we have examples also, right, right, Brigari and all. Mm. Philosopher criticizes devotees as naive, sentimental. Yeah. And then this is Lord Chaitanya was criticized by Prakashananda Saraswati in Banaras, right? So during Lord Chaitanya's time, right, in Banaras, right? So Banaras was the powerhouse for Mayavadis, and then their leader was Prakashananda Saraswati. Okay, and Lord Chaitanya actually traveled all the way. So from in those days, right? So by walking, and so he covered from West Bengal, right? So or Bangladesh, from there in until I think this was from Puri. Yeah, so from Puri to Banaras, and so there when he went, right? So the Lord used to dance, right? So with kirtans, and then he used to mesmerize. So there were so once he entered, right, into the city, the Banaras. So people also started chanting and dancing. So Lord Chaitanya was very powerful, right? So and so this Prakashananda Saraswati was a Mayavadi leader, yeah, and then he was also sannyasi. Okay, and so that is a very long story. I'll just cut it out. So he actually gave a comment saying that sannyasis should not be sentimentalist. Yeah, so and then so Lord Chaitanya taught him a lesson. Yeah, so he actually was invited uh, for lunch. Yeah, so wherein there was some discussions happening. So Lord Chaitanya went there, and then say he actually tore them apart, right? So whatever philosophies they had, right? So they put forward. So he had 10,000 disciples, yeah, and Lord Chaitanya refuted every single discussion which was being given, right? So anything asked for, right? He replied them back. Yeah. in the terms of bhakti. So he actually converted all the 10,000 disciples along with Prakashna and Saraswati to Vaishnavas. So that's the mercy. Yeah. And I think this particular incident only covers a lot of things. Refutation, we can see many learned scholars have put forward philosophy of devotion. Even if a devotee is not intelligent enough to take advantage of the literature of spiritual master, if he's sincere, then helped by Krishna from within. Yeah. So Krishna will help in two ways. Yeah. So one is within as Paramatma, and the other is through Shastras. Yeah. So that is how Krishna helps us. So Shastras is Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So if we read them and then if we are able to digest and then focus on it, so he's helping from there and internally as Paramatma. Yeah. And what about the material necessities of life? When darkness is removed and Lord is pleased, everything is automatically provided by the Lord. And what is the solution for conditioned living entity? Heart is covered with dust of materialism since millions of birth can only be cleansed by chanting. So this we know, right? So even the Sikshastakam also we have this, right? The verse, yeah. So all these things only will have Chetodarpanamarjanam, right? So it will only have happen when we chant attentively. Yeah. So about necessities of material life and all those things, right? So we think of so many things, right? So if you see, right, Prabhupada had only 40 rupees when he left to the US. So did he think what will happen? So if I go to the US and then will I starve? Nothing, right? So he's one of the great examples. Yeah. And then if you even see, right, the live example we have our Naminister Prabhu also. The Naminister Prabhu is an IIT engineer, right? She is from IIT Kanpur. When in say I think in 1990 he got his degree. Yeah. So by then he was an IIT engineer from Kanpur. Yeah. So you see, so he had a corporate job also, so which he left, right? So those he is enlightened, right? He doesn't think what will happen to my life and all those things, right? So that's at a different stature, yeah. So to get that enlightenment is not that easy. Okay. And whosoever are dependent, the Lord takes care of it. Yeah. So we actually think a lot. True, that's not that easy. Yeah. So everyone can't do that. There are only very few souls who can do that. Yeah. So even so the whole ISKCON, if you see, right, even in our temple we have a temple vice president also, right? Sridhar Prabhu, who's a doctor. Yeah. But he never practiced. He studied MBBS and then he took up Krishna consciousness. So that anyhow, it's not that easy. Yeah. So, but yes, so those who have taken it up, the Lord actually takes care of it. Okay. So we'll cover this, we'll stop this. We cover two sections and then tomorrow we'll cover the other section. Yeah. So those who have not marked attendance, you can mark it. Oh, my video is stopped, is it? Sorry, I didn't notice. Okay, if there are any questions related to today's topic, we'll pick it up for 5 minutes and then close this session for today. Yes, Pankaj Prabhu, go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam. Prabhuji, in one of the slides you showed like the one who is attached to the fruitative action. He knows the goal of life, but he is yet attached to fruitative action, and which means that he is performing karma yoga. So we have karma yoga in with respect to Krishna consciousness also. So this is another karma yoga. So Prabhuji, in want to understand again, like how in professional life can someone be like whatever work we are doing, like how if that work is not related for Krishna, it is related for something else, then how? Because again we have to we the thing is we need to find out the balance between the material and spiritual world also. So if in material world there's no balance, then again there would be again so much of like worries, tension, and then the things get imbalanced. So wanted to understand that, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so here, so this is not Nishkama Karma Yoga, right, Prabhu? So this is Karma Yoga. So in Karma Yoga, the Lord says, so this is what he's enjoying the fruits, right? So the actual thing is the actual Karma Yoga should be Nishkama Karma Yoga. So wherein we don't enjoy the fruits, we leave it. So I'll take an example. So like we all are working, right? And say we are working for the livelihood and then to maintain family and all those things, right? Day in and day out. So whatever work is being given to us, right, Prabhu, do it to the best. Yeah. And at the end, right, say leave it to Krishna and then leave that work aspect there itself. Say you went to the office, you did a 9 to 7 job or 9 to 8 job, right? When you shut down, right, tell the Lord that this is what I could do, and then move on. Yeah, and then say if you get a chance, right? So wherever you can, so actually think of the Lord, remember the Lord in your work also, and then carry on the aspects, and then don't carry the work to home. Yeah, and so and then so while your japa time and all those things, right? So during that time, say this material thing should not overtake the spiritual stuff. So that should be confined to that boundary, and then this boundary that should not come to this boundary. Yeah, it shouldn't be that every day morning you sit for chanting, and then we start thinking of the office. Right, morning I'll go first hour, I'll do this. Second hour I'll send this mail. Third I'll do something else, and that's gone. So the japa time is actually overtaken by our material life. So we shouldn't do that. So that balance is required, Prabhu. Okay. There is
Sure.
another question. Can you explain your biography? I want to know about you. I am nothing, Prabhu. So leave about me. So you should leave. You should know the biographies of Prabhupada. Yeah. So read Prabhupada's biography. So that will help you.
Prabhuji,
I am ready.